Why don't I feel happy anymore? Have you ever asked yourself that question? I know I ask myself that a lot, and I spend a lot of time thinking about why I don't feel happy in the same way that I used to many years ago. And if I sort of analyse it, I sort of think, if you imagine you've got a line here which is sort of your level of happiness, then it seems like a few years ago this would be somewhere in the middle, and you'd have sort of low spots here, but then you'd also have the high spots, and this would be your kind of life. But when I sort of think about it now, it seems like my levels down here quite low, and when I do have a sort of brief spell of something that should make me happy, all it's doing is sort of taking me back to where normal is, and I'm sort of never reaching these highs that that I used to reach, and it sort of makes me wonder: is it something with me because I'm getting older, or is it just something that comes through life experience? When you're young and you don't have much kind of reference points in life, you're sort of in the middle. You start in the middle, and you have these lows, but then you sort of spring back to the middle again, and then you have the highs, and then gradually, as you get older and you start to realise the way the world works, your sort of expectations lower, and you sort of normalise yourself, so you start with lower expectations, and then when something does come to make you happy, it basically just temporarily takes you back to that midpoint, and so we're just all perpetually stuck in this kind of lower state of happiness, because that's how our minds have normalised the world that we live in. Unless, of course, you're particularly lucky, and your life is going perfectly, and you're still managing to stay in the middle and forget about much of the bad stuff going on. But yeah, I think for a lot of us, we just drift into this lower level, which is why a lot of people try to bring themselves back up again artificially through medication, whether that's prescription or other forms, such as alcohol or casual drugs, or even just through the sort of the dopamine boost of social media. It's all ways for people to artificially just bring themselves back up to that normal point again, because they don't, they're not feeling those highs that they used to feel. We're treating these things now just as a way to return ourselves to that centre point where we used to be. And of course, the problem with that is that when you artificially try to bring yourself back up, your body and your mind tries to overcorrect, and then once you stop doing these things, you experience an even lower load than you did before, because your mind suddenly swings completely the other way. So that brief high that you was feeling just becomes even worse, which is your mind's way of trying to maintain balance, because as human beings, we have these primal instincts where we're not supposed to be overly happy all the time or overly sad all the time. We're supposed to be in the middle. If we as humans are happy all the time, then it means that as a species we're not aware of the dangers in the world, and that's part of our survival instinct. Is we have to be aware of the bad. So so our minds say to us, no, you're getting a bit too happy here, let's not forget the bad stuff, and it brings you theoretically back down to the middle. But it seems that our minds aren't quite so good at bringing us back to the middle when we're constantly in the lows all the time. It's not okay to be happy all the time, but it seems to be okay for our bodies to let us be miserable all the time and never return to that common ground that we really want. And I don't know what the solution is here. I honestly, if I had to think about it, is it possible to get back to that middle state again? Or is just all the life experience you take in, and the awareness, especially in this day and age now, of 24-hour news coverage and social media and everything, we're constantly aware of, of all the things to be miserable about in the world. At least in the pre-internet days, it was only when you watched the 6 o'clock news in the evening or the 10 o'clock news, which you could easily ignore, or if you went out and bought a newspaper to read in the morning, then you'd know. But then for the rest of the day, between that morning newspaper and the evening news, you could sort of enjoy the good in the world. But now it's a constant bombardment. So it's hardly surprising that we're down in the basement when it comes to happiness. And occasionally, just when we make it halfway up the stairs and we're almost back to the room with the light in it, we get knocked back down the stairs again, and we tumble back down and lay in the puddle of water and filth on the basement floor, and that's where we're doomed to spend the rest of our days. Doom and gloom. See, I'm bringing it on myself, but yeah, it's just something I think of. You kind of think, is it just a passing thing? Because again, when you was young, bad things came and they went. You have a bad day at school or something, but you tend to spring back quite quickly. Okay, granted, some people had unpleasant childhoods and they didn't spring back so easily. But I mean, I think for many people, they found it very easy when they were younger to spring back to that middle point, whereas now, in our beaten down and weary adult lives, it just seems very, very hard to get to that middle ground. So even the most amazing thing, just barely takes us to the point of normal non-misery. Look, for instance, I can be watching a TV program and there'll be a funny part in the TV program, and for a minute there you think, that made me laugh. And then it's not long, sometimes within a few minutes, you suddenly sort of back down again. It's not like the days when you used to watch a programme and then for the next few hours after it, it'd be sticking with you. It's like literally you finish that, turn that thing off, and it's right, okay, here I am, just back to where I was again, with no sort of residual happiness or anything. It was just that little temporary blip and then you're down again. So I don't know. I can't offer solutions here. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist even. I don't know what the answer is. All I can do is analyse how I feel sometimes, and like I say, I don't know whether there's going to be some magic turning point in the future where just suddenly everything seems carefree and happy again, or whether this is what it feels like to grow older. Who knows? But what about you? If you're here watching this video, I presume something brought you here. So you must in some way be feeling the same. So what's your experiences? Do you feel like you're living in a temporary state which you can spring back from, or do you feel like this is just the way that life makes you, and you kind of have to, like I say, sort of normalise it and accept that you're never going to be reaching as highs again, which is it's a terrible mindset to have, but is that reality? Is it wrong to live in this fantasy world where we think everything's going to be happiness, lollipops and rainbows, or do we have to be realists and recognise that much of the world is a dark, miserable place that we just have to live in it? Sorry to bring the mood down, but it's something that I genuinely think about, and I'm sure many of you think about it too. So let me know in the comments what you think about it. Again, as I always say in these videos, give me reassurance that it's not just me who's saying these things, and and rambling on to a camera like a madman. Let me know that there are at least a couple of people out there who feel the same. And until then, keep getting by the best you can, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.